Wow, okay, what an amazing conference this has been. This has been, I always feel, such a fantastic opportunity for us to all connect and to collaborate, and the amount of energy and momentum that gets created. Is that better? Oh, okay. Yeah, the amount of energy and momentum that we create when we come together, and with everybody that is joining us online. We need all of it. It just gives us so much to move forward with. We kind of leave here and we feel that extra bit of inspiration. And I have so much gratitude to each and every one of you and everyone that is part of the community and helped create this community. I love the fact that we have a little bit of chance, Pierre and I, to talk a little bit about some of the global efforts that we are moving towards. Let's just do that. I've been part of this community for about 3 years, and as Dylan just mentioned, you know, when I came to the 2023 conference, we suddenly said, well, let's just get a little bit more going on and collaborate a bit more. And it's extraordinary how much we have expanded in the last few years globally. Like, it blows my mind. And so much, obviously, is because of the amazing administration at KIF1A.org, but also to all the global ambassadors for their time, because we meet and we share and we support each other. And the amount of strength that we harness from that is so immense and so empowering. And so before I talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done in Canada, I thought I would just share a tiny little bit about my little warrior, Sophia, because, she just is a very different story to so many of the canned warriors, so many of the stories that I've shared with you guys. And it's such an inspiring story of hope, because when Sophia was around about 6 months old, through reasons that we just don't know still, her entire body just shut down. So not a single muscle in her body worked, nothing. Her eyes were just fixed in one spot, and it's almost like she just died, but she had a beating heart. And we had no idea. We thought we had this typically developing 6-month-old, and suddenly there was nothing. And no one knew what had happened. And so we sort of fell into that black hole that pretty much all of us that are families with kids with this, we do when we even get that diagnosis. You just lose all this hope. You just fall apart. You don't know what to do, the pain, the sadness, all of that. And so at that point, no one knew, because this is like 19 years ago. And everybody said, we have no idea. So we just had to figure out what to do. And I just would love to share like 3 words or 3 pillars that we lived by until we found this community 16 years later. And they are courage, commitment, and neuroplasticity. So courage, because all of us know that when we get that diagnosis, we know that pain, we know what we feel like, how much we fall apart, the sadness. And we have to harness our families and our friends and our community. We have to build that village to give us courage. Give us courage to just make it through that day. And then when we've made it through that day, give us courage to make it through one more day. And that's how we move forward. And the commitment, because looking after our canned warriors is a full-time, more than a full-time job. And it's exhausting from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep. And for some of us, even while they sleep, it's so much. And we still at the same time have our jobs, and we have our families, and we have life. And I don't even know, didn't ever learn the word self-care until probably like a couple of years ago. Like, it just goes out the window. So that takes commitment, and that takes courage and commitment. But my favorite word of all time is neuroplasticity. It's like the air that I breathe when I think of that word, because if you think of when I came up here today, I just chose that simplest path to just come up onto this stage. But if that had all been blocked off for some reason, I would have just gone around the side and I would have come up here. And if that was blocked off, I'd have gone around that side and come up here. And it doesn't really matter how many blockages there were. I really wanted to chat to you guys. So I would have found a way to come up here. And that, to me, simplistically, is neuroplasticity. We just have so many barriers for finding ways to help our kids, but there's always another neural pathway, another way that we can travel to try and achieve that goal. So we lived by these three pillars, and somehow that child that you just saw on that last slide that went from nothing, and I really can't emphasize how much it was nothing, she managed to stand, and suddenly, somehow, several years later, a step came, and no words, just crying and screaming, and then suddenly a word came. I was talking to Lottie this morning about how some of the funny experiences when you just don't think it's going to happen, but it somehow happens, and this child started to take on another form. And that's all we really needed, is her to take on another form. And one day I walked into our physiotherapy clinic, and 16 years later, and I saw this little boy, Jonah, if Addie's watching, hi to Jonah. I didn't know he had CAND at the time. I just saw this child, and some of us have talked about this, where you see a kid and you go, you kind of know that kid has the same thing, the way their eyes move, or the way they move. We start to understand that. So I saw this little boy, Jonah, and I was like, gosh, it's the first time in 16 years I've seen a child that reminds me of this. And so right away I tried to find out from their parents, like, what has this child been diagnosed? What's up with this child? And sure enough, he had CAND, and that's what led us to our diagnosis of CAND. Our blood was in the bank at BC Children's Hospital, but it'd just been in there for 16 years. But now we got this diagnosis, and we found this community, and it was amazing. But what I remember the most about that day was Jonah's parents coming and saying to me, so do you think that Jonah might be able to walk like Sophia? Do you think Jonah might be able to speak like Sophia? And I don't know. I said to her, I have no idea, but I just went back to just have some courage, make the commitment, believe in neuroplasticity. We just don't know. At this point, I hadn't even found this community. That came about a few months later. So, believe everything is possible until it's not. And that's how we lived. And I see Addie whenever we can, and we're so lucky to be so close for that support. So we moved along, and it kind of leads me a little bit into the goals that we're going to talk about for Canada. Oh, that was my neuroplasticity side. I get so excited about neuroplasticity. Anyway, so one day Addie actually called me up, and she said, hey, did you listen to the federal budget? And I never listened to the Canadian federal budget. And she said, they're actually providing a whole load of funding for rare disease. And I was like, oh, really? And that was, our conversation ended, and I was like a dog with a bone, because I'm like, well, I don't think anyone still really knows about CAND. We try and advocate, we try and say it. So I think I went down the entire list of people that were involved with anything to do with this, the emails and the phone numbers, and I emailed everyone and phoned everyone, and no one emailed back and no one phoned back, so I emailed back, so we go on. And finally one day, someone emailed back, and I remember I was so excited, and then I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? And that's when I'm like, Dylan, oh my God, and Angie, and every step of the way, I'm always like, Dylan, on speed dial. And, so we built this affiliation with Rare Disease Can, which is going to be a massive foundation for us and we've already moved a little further forward, but we knew we needed to do that. And Dylan was at every single meeting with me, to really show that they loved the fact that we have this structure. They don't have to start from the beginning with us. And so we've heard earlier on that we are moving fairly nicely along in Canada to be able to bring the ASO trials here. But I'm so excited that we managed to do that. And then at the same time, one of the goals that I really wanted to have was to connect our physicians and our neurologists, because again, we can't work in these small little pockets. We've got to connect up. You've got to just say, hey, do you know this person? And I know that my neurologist had already talked to Dr. Chung. And so we brought our neurologist into the meetings with Rare Kids Can, just to make as strong a team as possible, so that when we finally get this all going, when all the pieces come together, we can get this all up and running in Canada, because our warriors all deserve the chance, not just in Canada, we all deserve this opportunity to try and make the best of the things that we're achieving with the ASOs. And so, yeah, we wanted to get our neurologists together. I too can't read from that side, but we have the issues with regulation that we're trying to work on. We talked about that a little bit earlier in some of the lectures. Regulation is difficult. And then the other part that we really ran into as far as a barrier was we have the younger population, lots of the pediatric population, but one of our warriors that is able to use this ASO is going to tap out of the pediatric population pretty soon, certainly by the time we get to doing this trial. So we actually need an adult institution as well to run this trial. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, where we've got the physician part. I think we're en route with that, where I've got the warriors that are ready to go, but we need to find the Canadian institutions that will support this. We have amazing families in Canada, and I love how many of us are here. I just feel so terrible because we're such a big country and I don't ever get to see anyone. And so we have lots of work going on for raising awareness, for fundraising, for all the different things. And we are trying to set up KIF1A.ca. I was chatting to Pierre a little bit earlier, and it seems like it's a lot easier in Europe with all the regulations in Canada. But a huge shout out to Amanda and to Melissa, who's not here, because we've been trying to work to get KIF1A.ca up and running, and we will do that. It's our goal. But I have spoken to lots of you in Canada that I need help. Like, we're a big country and we're on different time zones. So I think we're going to look at maybe getting one or two more ambassadors, maybe Eastern Canada and Western Canada. And I think the whole way along, as I've spoken about these things, I've sort of keep saying, you've just got to keep taking little steps. I always say that to Dylan and Angie. I'm like, I don't know, we'll just take the next step. The next part comes along. And so I'm going to end sort of on my last slide because I really love this. This slide is one of my favorite things. I take it everywhere with me because we have big goals, but we need to keep taking these little steps to get there. And so one of the things I did recently, I really thought I could maybe think about retiring soon. And then I decided to go back to school and become a rehab therapist because I just got so inspired by all the physiotherapists and all the OTs and all the SLPs that it just blows my mind what they did for Sophia when we really had no idea what was going on. And I also did it because it's such a lovely pathway to talk about CAN, because I get into all these cool places where I can do it. And right before I left to come here, because I was like, I don't know if I can talk in front of lots of people, but I managed to get it together for this. And then literally the day before I left, I was telling, I'm in a physiotherapy department right now. And I was so excited about the conference and I was telling them about it. And then the clinical administrator sort of came along and said, hey, actually, when you come back, at the end of your placement, can you do a presentation for our hospital? We'd love to know. And I was like, well, okay, I'll do a dry run at the conference. Let's see how that goes. But, it's those little steps. That time you say something, each one moves us a little closer to our goals. So thank you all for listening. We're going to keep moving forward and we'll get to our goals eventually, I'm sure. Thank you.